Hello, everyone. Today I thought I would do something slightly different and just sit down, chill with you all, and talk about a very interesting subject, something that was sparked by a comment that I noticed by Bati on one of my recent posts from a few weeks ago. So this is a bit long, so bear with me, but I think it's worth reading out the whole comment. So Bati says, I've been wondering in formal music education settings how much psychoacoustic aspects of sound play a role in teaching. It's hard to describe, but what I mean is that physics-wise, how our neuropsychological tendencies affect our music perception and how different qualities of tones create different sensations. The emphasis is more on how to make a note sound beautiful rather than accurate. For instance, of course, this might be subjective, but still. Maybe it's better if I can give an example. Once Nils Fromm said, people seem to like that track where I play one chord for 7 minutes. If I presented that at some really good music school, they'd tell me it's not even a track, it's not even an idea. But what Nils emphasizes in spades is texture and quality of the sound produced, I think. For this reason, he doesn't describe himself as a classical pianist. So I've been wondering about your opinion. Does academia have a penchant for conventionalism rather than experimentation in this respect? Would someone like Nils, who emphasizes the tone, each studio-crafted voicing, plonks and zings and bounces in his recordings, be overlooked in music school settings? And ultimately, if it's the case, I wonder your personal stance and opinion about the underlying reasons behind this. Thank you so much in advance. And thank you so much for this comment, Bati. I'm really excited to talk about it. I will give a disclaimer because my views on music academia and music education in conservatories with mentors, all of that, they constantly shift and evolve over time, and I think I gain new insights about my past education as well as time passes. So this is a constantly shifting subject, but as I see things currently, I can talk about a few things. So I think I'll start off with a summary of some of my lingering thoughts on this, and that is that music academia requires a certain specific set of things for it to run in an efficient and organized way. And a lot of it has to do with quantifiable data and quantifiable things in general to mark progress and encourage development. And schools, music schools, conservatories, universities, wherever it is that you're having this music education, it's really focused on the craft for now. A majority of the schools out there, they're focusing on a very specific type of music or aspect of music, and rightfully so, because there's so many things to cover in music, and in order to excel in many of these different disciplines, you have to put in that fundamental work where you're covering so much that will just serve as your foundation. So I understand this, and I don't think music academia needs to change because of the things that I would like to talk about. But ultimately, it's craft over, let's say, artistry, and that is a very heavy statement because by no means am I saying that education in music academia is devoid of artistry. That is completely not the case, but I'm just saying that the focus is more on the craft, and that is a very specific, detailed, and, like I said, often quantifiable way of doing things. And this builds skills for a very strong and well-rounded and capable musician, in my opinion. What Nils is talking about here, where he says if he presented it to a school, they tell me it's not even a track, it's not even an idea. I think that, first of all, I agree, but it's a little difficult to put that in context of the conservatories that are out there, because yes, if you take that track, and I'm pretty sure I know which track he's referring to, and if you present it in a panel of teachers and mentors in a music conservatory in a composition department, I think there will not be as many people there in that setting that would recognize the brilliance of this track or what he's trying to do and really pay attention enough to give this credit. And also, it has a lot to do with taste. In a lot of these settings, quite honestly, a lot of the teachers there aren't going to have the taste that recognizes this as brilliant. Now, all of this is very subjective, and it's based on my observations and my limited observations. I've had a number of classes, a number of teachers, and I've been to a number of schools. So this is just from my my little set of binoculars and the bubble that I was in. So don't don't take what I'm saying too seriously. Also, in an academia setting, your goals for evaluating something and teaching someone is not the same as maybe evaluating something in real life, where if you are listening to a track or looking through a score just out of curiosity and as a music appreciator, your experience of that coming into that setting is completely different than your experience of opening up a score or a track in a music school with the intention to critique this work so that this particular individual will continue to develop or just get new insights out of it. So it's a little tricky to compare and think about in this aspect. Also, a big thing that I think about, not just in composition, but with music in general in schools, is that going back to how it's more focused on craft rather than the overall artistry. I still hesitate to say that, but I do feel that way. A lot of these schools, they're not focusing on taste. Taste in general, if we talk about it, it's a very individual thing, and it comes from so many different things that in the context of a music school, I don't think that's necessarily the focus. And that was certainly not my experience as a classical pianist in schools. You're not given so much credit in terms of what types of pieces you curate into a program or I don't know. This is a very difficult subject to articulate, but with the limited time also that you have with your teacher and in that program, we're talking about 2 to 4 at most, 6, 7 years if you're really pushing it. In that limited span of time, there's so much to cover in terms of just, if you're a pianist, let's figure out how you're going to be efficient at using your fingers and your arms to play a certain piece of music, and learning all this repertoire. And so it may seem like when you exit the conservatory, you're given much more credit to have completed or learned 50 pieces and increased your scales and arpeggios by 50 BPM, whatever it is, than it is to come out having more refined taste. And again, that's subjective. So just to wrap up this thought, I just think that music schools, they need to operate in this way because of their specific set of reasons. If you try to take real world experiences of music, let's call it appreciation, even though that's a weird term, and reapply it to music schools, I think there's just a bit of a disconnect. So I would keep those things separate, and I find that for myself, it helps for me to just keep it separate. Because when I was in music school, I always felt like the things that were being focused on and what we were encouraged to obsess over were not very interesting, and I always questioned it, and I was not mouthy, but I was not the most compliant with everything. Of course, I was, interested in becoming a very good student and listening to my teachers and all of that. But I always felt a little skeptical of what we were prioritizing in music school. Now, fast forward many years later, I realized the importance of that setup, and I understand why music schools basically run the way they do. Is there room for improvement? Definitely. And I think in the next years, hopefully, there will be more programs, because right now, a lot of the programs out there, they're either classical music, there is sound design, of course. I see more electronic degrees, there's film scoring degrees, there definitely jazz, but there aren't, it's still a very narrow amount of specialization when you take into account the vast, just the, incredible spectrum of different kinds of music. Basically, there's always room for improvement, and just being aware of the fact that music schools perhaps run this way because of a certain set of reasons, and certain pieces will have different results in the real world because of different reasons, I think is, worthwhile to think about. Anyway, this was quite a ramble, but hopefully you found it interesting. I really love thinking about this, and if you ask me the same question a week from today, I may have a very different answer, or a slightly adjusted answer. So let me know your thoughts on this, and maybe we can continue to talk about it and just continue to ponder. Anyway, I hope everyone's doing well, and I will see you in the next video.